So I gave you a couple of permutations in their stack notations to look at. You wrote them as products of disjoint cycles. That process seemed relatively straightforward. You just have to sort of follow where each of these elements goes in the line. And then where it gets fun is finding the products. So let's walk through this product example, alpha times beta, together, just to make sure that we're all on the same page before we go away for the weekend. So how do you find the product of permutations when they're written in cycle notation? So what I always like to do is write down a cycle where I start with 1. I always start with 1 and ask, where does 1 go? Well, where does 1 go in this example? First, 1 goes to 2. Right? Because we're reading in contravariant ordering, we're going to look at the rightmost permutation in the line. 1 goes to 2. But then after that, this permutation happens, and what's happening to 2 in this permutation? Nothing. And then what happens to 2 in this permutation? It goes back to 1. And so at the end of the day, 1 is going to 1. And that completes that cycle. So now I know where 1 goes. Let's go to the next element. What about 2? 2 is going to 3. And then in the next permutation, 3 is staying put. Yeah, these two are fixing 3. So 2 goes to 3 and remains at 3. So 2 goes to 3 at the end of the day. Where does 3 go? 3 goes to 5, which then goes to 4. So ultimately, 3 goes to 4. 3, yeah, let me write that. 3 goes to 5, which goes to 4. Where does 4 go? 4 stays put and then goes to 5. And then stays put again. So 4 goes to 5. And then where does 5 go? It goes to 6 and stays at 6. Finally, where does 6 go? It goes back to 1. And then 1 goes to 2. So ultimately, 6 goes to 2, which completes that 5 cycle.
So that's how you want it written?
And so that cycle notation is how I'd want this answer written. I can think of one modification I would make to simplify this cycle notation. We can take out the 1. Why? What's happening in the permutation that only has a 1 inside of cycle? 1 is going to itself. Everything else is also, by assumption, going to itself. So it's the same as an identity permutation, right? If I write a single element in parentheses like this in a cycle, every one cycle is just the identity, which means we can choose to write it or not to write it. Its action is invisible.